our chairman told me, at one point he said, "Stop doing what I tell you. I'm sitting there from a million miles away giving you armchair advice. I expect you to know better than me." And actually, it's a bad sign if you're just taking that and executing on it without putting your own thoughts.
Welcome back to another episode of the Revenue Reimagined podcast. We are stoked to have with us today Bowen Moody, who is the CEO and co-founder of Wonderway, an AI sales training and coaching platform. For the last 7 years, he's been helping sales teams figure out how to leverage their data to identify gaps in their teams, what training is needed most, and what impact it's having on people's performance. The goal of today's podcast is to coach Dale and let him know what he needs to do to actually be successful. With that said, Bowen, thanks for joining the show, man.
I didn't know that was the goal of today's call. Is how coachable are you, Dale?
That's the problem.
We will find out how coachable I am. I try to coach Adam all the time. It's like a losing battle. So maybe we can use Wonderway in our own coaching pieces.
I like a challenge.
Not if you build a fucking Dale bot, but.
Thanks for joining the show. One thing we'd like to start off with when we talk to founders is really the origin story. We find a lot of founders don't do a really great job of articulating why they started it, emotionally pieces. You started a company 7 years ago, so you've kind of been through ups and downs. So what made you start Wonderway?
Okay, great. Yeah, if you want the emotional side, then I think it all comes down to what I was doing in my previous job. I was in a corporate job that I wasn't happy with, trying to figure out what was next. Wanted to start a company of my own, and I was literally sitting in my bedroom with a notepad and a piece of paper, and I said I want to start a company, and I want to work on something that I can make money from, but also that is meaningful to me and that's helping people. And I went through a lot of different ideas and landed on education and edtech as being a space that I was excited about, because I think that is, it's a nice balance. And I think that's just such an important thing that maybe, as you said, a lot of people overlook, because once you start that company, you're going to be sitting there talking to people about that topic every single day, from the moment you wake up till the moment you finish work until the moment you go to sleep. You're going to be dreaming about it, right? And not to knock on anyone else, but for me personally, I'd find it very difficult to be motivated by doing like financial services or something like that. I think it's not something that appeals to me. But education, I love it that every day I come to work and I talk to people about, how do they get better? What are they looking to improve? Talking about self-development. I think that's really rewarding and helps when times are tough in startups, as they often are.
It's funny because I think. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's the emotional catalyst, but I can also share the actual sort of journey that I've been on through that. But that was the emotional catalyst that sort of kicked it off.
So I do want to talk about the journey a little bit, but you said something that I think is really important that a lot of founders either A, don't talk about, or B, honestly think the opposite. And you talk about like you're going to do it every day, right? So you have to be passionate about it. You have this is what you talk about all day. Like all day I talk about the fact that somehow this guy swindled me into working with him. But when you think about that, there's a lot of founders out there that I don't think are super passionate about what they're doing. The great ones are, right? They love what they're building. They love what they're doing. But I've spoken with a ton of founders who are like, listen, like I'm just about the product that's going to make me the most money or that I could flip as quickly as possible. And there isn't that passion. Whether it's your founder startup journey or even people you're bringing to the team, like how important, like really do you think that passion is as you continue to grow and scale Wonderway?
I think it's so important. I mean, for me personally, to get through those tough times I mentioned, but also on my journey, I've had two co-founders that have come and gone because they weren't as committed and they weren't as passionate. And I think that is an extremely painful experience to go through twice. I'm the CEO and sort of the business side, and I work with two co-founders who were more on the tech side, and they're excited about building products. But I think sales training wasn't something that sort of got them up every morning. And I think, going through some of the tough times we have with COVID, and the recession in the tech industry over the last few years, I think that really comes to the fore if you're not passionate about the mission of the company. So I think it's important. I mean, it's been important for me. I've seen the impact that it has on co-founders, and I think it also comes through when you're recruiting and you're working with people as well. Like being able to talk about passionately, finding people that want to get on the journey with you. They need to be, if you've got a meaningful mission and you're excited about it, and other people are too, then I think it's critical to build a good culture and get through those rough patches.
Yeah,
Love it.
It's very, very difficult. You kind of go up and down, and one of the things that happens. I mean, you've been at this for 7 years, and you've kind of come into a space now that is getting super hot. This AI coaching, being able to help other people coach. We've worked with a lot of revenue leaders, founders who haven't done a great job of coaching because there's so much data. It's so overwhelming for them. What does Wonderway do in a way to help them speed that up much quicker, have them be better coaches? Because we need better coaches. Like no one really teaches revenue leaders how to be great revenue leaders. I think part of it is coaching. What's Wonderway doing to help them be better coaches?
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, it's preparing for those coaching conversations better. But I think the best way to explain that is maybe to share my own experience. Like before we built Wonderway Coach, then I was using conversation intelligence tools. So I've been using Gong and Chorus, etc. For many years, and been recording the calls for many years. But I never had time to watch the calls with the sales team. So I always promised my sales reps I was going to watch at least one call a week. It started per rep. Then I adjusted my expectations. I said once every 2 weeks, once a month. I'm also talking about call coaching. I know coaching is bigger than this, but I think call coaching is an important part for sales leaders. And it's so important to listen to those calls, but it's one of those important but not urgent things that they should be doing. At the end of the day, everyone knows they should be doing more, but the day-to-day gets in the way. And, if you've got an hour blocked in your calendar to listen to a call, it's one of those things you can always push. So I just personally felt guilty about this, and my team was hassling me about it, that I wasn't listening to calls. And it was basically the catalyst that went into building the AI coach, is that once we saw what was possible with large language models that have been released in the last 12 to 18 months, we saw an opportunity here to build a coach that actually listens to the calls for managers, scores them to see how well the rep is performing according to a scorecard, similar to what a real human coach would do, summarizes what the main strengths and weaknesses were on the call, and then aggregates that data across time, so across week or month. What that allows us to do is basically build like a pre-built coaching plan for the managers for what are the main 1 or 2 areas of improvement that rep has that you need to focus on them with. So I think it just saves a lot of time listening to the calls. If you're going to do a proper call coaching session, you probably need to spend an hour or 2 listening to calls to prepare for your 30-minute coaching session with your rep. The key idea here and the opportunity we saw and we're working on is like, how can we flip that so you can spend less time preparing and more time actually working with the rep on the things that matter. And I think that is, where that's something that AI can't do, is like, I think what managers need to do, they need to be spending time with the reps. They need to be connecting with them. They need to be translating that data into something that's meaningful within the company and their personal motivations. But they don't have the time to spend, hours and hours preparing for that. They should be focusing on what they're good at, which is spending time with people and connecting.
So I agree with you. And I think, listen, we're all guilty of it, right? Like I certainly have had call coaching blocks and I'm like, oh shit, like I got this presentation to, like, there's always something that's more important. Like I'm sad to say, but it's the lowest thing, right? Like it's not, and I'll do it later. And then there's never a later. So I love that you're working to solve that. When you're building out, Bowen, this coach, how customizable is the coach? Like, so for example, like Dale and I are 2 different leaders. We might have very different philosophies on what makes a good call versus a bad call. Like, how do you build that playbook? Or even more so, like, can it be like Adam's the coach, Bowen's the coach? Dale got fired from being a coach, but like, can you pick your coach?
We haven't got to the point yet where we can pick the coach, but it is definitely something we've played around with and we'd like to do eventually. But it is fully customizable in terms of the playbook and the skills that you're focusing on. So I think this is super important. Most of the
So it's
customers
my
we're
it's
working
my
with,
it's my playbook. It might not be my voice, but like I'm building what's important to me. So it is customizable, just not
yeah,
my
yeah,
face.
100%,
Quiet, Dale. Not a word.
100%.
Thank
100%. I mean, what we see is that every most companies we're working with, they have kind of like a base methodology that they might be working with. They might be working with Spin or Spiced or Medic or whatever as a base methodology, but everyone then customizes it to fit their own product, their own industry, their own process. So we have like within the product, we have templates according to the key methodologies, and then you can take that and you can tweak it to make it your own. So of course you can build it from scratch, but I think it makes it easier when there's a template to get started on, and then you can adjust it, and you can have different playbooks for like cold calls, discovery calls, demos, negotiations, implementations, etc. But I think that customization piece is super important. I mean, it needs to be specific to your sales process and what's important to you.
I'm super curious before Dale talks again. I'm just going to take over a little bit today. He takes over the sales call, so I'm going to take over the podcast. Of your clients, what sales methodology are you seeing being used a lot? And I ask because like LinkedIn's this echo chamber of shit, dude. Like if you're not using Medic, you suck. Oh, you got to use Spice, or else you're never going to grow. Like, do you see one amongst your customers that is like this is the methodology of April 2024?
Honestly, no. Maybe Spiced is probably actually the most popular, marginally, but I think that's more of a reflection of our customer base. We're working with a lot of like SaaS companies doing sort of mid-market deals. So I think that's maybe more a reflection of our customers rather than sort of a flavor of the moment, a moment in time.
Cool.
Can I talk
Go ahead,
now?
Dale. Add some value, please.
See, Adam always wants to aspire to be the coach that I am, so that's why he needs like a little bit. So we may need to help him, Bowen. As a founder, you know that you get advice all over the place. You get advice on how to do X or what to do with Y. Through your evolution, what are some of the things that you've gotten advice on, but you were like, I'm not really sure I'm going to go down that path, but it actually turned out to your benefit?
To my benefit, to ignore the advice that I got.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can think of lots of advice I got, several cases for advice I got from my investors that turned out to be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I think founders struggle with this all the time, right? Because how do you get money from an investor, or you have people that are advising you that you almost feel guilty, maybe, but you know in your heart it may not be the best for Wonderway. How do you balance that, and what advice would you give to these founders to be selective in the advice that they take on?
I think that's a really good question because I've noticed a big difference in myself since I started. I mean, I also had another company before this as well, and I think especially when I started out, advice that I got from my investors, I thought was an order. They suggest things, but I thought that I need to go away and action that straight away. Whereas
Yep.
now I'm much more. I take it as input, and I weigh it against. I don't just listen to the investors. We have advisors. We have people in the team. Just talk to my wife about it all the time. You take advice from multiple
She's the
sources.
most important one, by the way. She's the most
Absolutely.
important one.
Absolutely. But I think now it's more you take advice from lots of people and you it's all input, and then you take it and you make your own decision. But I think when I first started, especially after you take a check of $1 million from someone, you think that you need to do what they tell you to do. But actually, the crazy thing is that they don't want you to do what they tell you to do. They don't want that. I mean, that's also something our chairman told me. At one point he said, "Stop doing what I tell you." I'm sitting there from a million miles away giving you armchair advice. I expect you to
Yeah.
know better than me. And actually, it's a bad sign if you're just taking that and executing on it without putting your own thoughts.
Super important.
And
Like I think that part is like pure gold. I like a lot of people feel like they have to or they can't push back on the invest, especially first time founders where you haven't done it before. It is important to be able to push back a little bit and have your own perspective.
People buy from people. That's why companies who invest in meaningful connections win. The best part? Gifting doesn't have to be expensive to drive results, just thoughtful. Sendoso's intelligent gifting platform is designed to boost personalized engagement throughout the entire sales process. Trust me, I led sales for a Sendoso competitor, and I could tell you no one does gifting better than Sendoso. If you're looking for a proven way to win and retain more customers, visit sendoso.com.
especially when you realize that they don't always have your best interests at heart, right? I mean, they're doing their best, but I think a lot of founders over the last 2 years, it's been tech recession going on. It's been tough for a lot of founders out there, and at the end of the day, you've got different incentives here. Like the investors have got a portfolio approach where they want to push everyone to go as hard as possible, and if a couple of their startups crash and burn along the way, then makes life easy for them in some ways. They can focus on the winners. But of course,
Right.
for a founder, you don't have that portfolio. You've only got one shot. So I think there has been, you can read about it online, but there's been a lot of conflicts between investors and founders. I don't think it needs to be a conflict, though. I think it's input. You take it, you have a conversation about it, and then, at the end of the day, you do what is right for you. And if they don't like it, they can fire you. But I think they're going to be less likely to fire you if you're making your own. I think there's more trust actually if you're making good decisions. You make your own decisions and you can back it up with the reasoning. I think that actually builds more confidence than someone who needs to be told what to do.
Love
They
that.
don't. They're not. Otherwise you're just an employee. I mean, they want a CEO, and they can act as advisors, but they don't want an employee.
100%. I mean, when you look at the really successful startups or the really successful companies out there, it's the ones that have strong CEOs, opinionated CEOs. Like, it's okay to disagree with your investor. It's not okay to scream and yell and get in a pissing contest. Seen that too. But it is okay to disagree and explain why you disagree. Like you said it best, like they're not looking for a pushover to just say yes, because then you're an employee. You're the CEO and the founder for a reason. So I love that. When you look at the growth trajectory that y'all have had, and you look at where Wonderway started and where Wonderway is now, there's got to be some things along the way where like things just really didn't go as planned, right? Like something happened, and I want to say other than COVID, because we're going to exclude COVID from this, but something happened where it's like, oh shit, like this is not what we signed up for, and this is a big issue. And maybe this is something with your co-founders that are no longer there. Maybe it's something different, but I'd love to dig in for other founders listening of like what that looks like, how you dealt with that, and like what are the lessons learned so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this will be a common story for a lot of startups over the last 2 years. But we raised our seed round at the end of 2021. Raised the seed round at the end of 2021. Got the money. The first thing we did is we went out and hired, like, what did we do? Tripled the size of the team. Went out and hired a bunch of people. Um, just finally got all the pieces in place, and like we were ready to rock. And we had this financial plan where we were going to triple our revenue in a year. Sorry, an important piece of this puzzle is that at that time we basically had a sales onboarding product that helped companies, high growth venture backed companies who just raised a round to ramp up sales reps as fast as possible. And we were growing, tripled our revenue in 2021. When there was the boom after COVID, so we were looking hot. And then this recession hit just after we got the team in place, and the recession hit around, April, May 2022. Then suddenly everyone freaked out that the economy was going to turn down, venture funding dried up, our target market basically evaporated, and suddenly we had this team that was built to go 3x in a year. where it was already obvious we weren't going to be able to hit that. And I think that was a super challenging moment. Like we just spent a couple of months getting everyone in place. And, what do you do here? Do you, that was a lot of conflicting advice. A lot of people saying, fire everyone and go back and lick your wound, hide until the end of the recession. Other people were saying you got to push through. And you're getting a lot of different advice. And in the end, you have to make your own call. So for us, we had an onboarding product. We knew that wasn't going to be hit in a recession, so we needed to change.
Yep.
And we knew, people were saying we could just sit back and wait it out, but nobody knew at that time how long it was going to last. Some people were saying 6 months, others are saying a year. Now we're sitting here with the benefit of hindsight that it's 2 years going strong, I would say. So
Yeah, right.
I don't think we could just sit there on the money and wait. I mean, it's boring, and in that time you could almost start again and build something else. So what we did, our choice at least, was we had the team in. We knew we needed to change the product, so we pivoted the product and we focused on ongoing training and helping sales teams get more out of the existing team they had. So rather than hiring new sales reps, how do you increase the performance of those that you have in the team? So we pivoted to focus more on efficiency, increasing conversion rates for the reps, and we kept the whole product team on to pivot the product. And in fact, we actually kind of increased our spend more here on the R&D side. So we lent in on this. We raised a bridge round very soon after, which it's very difficult to do, but we secured it, and then we pushed our way through. And I'd say that, a year, I'd say that was a risky decision, but the alternative was to sort of give up. And I don't think that was an option. I didn't really see that as an option. So, admittedly, we made this decision. And I would say that it didn't just work itself out. I'd say we got some more traction. It improved where we were, but it didn't solve our problems. I think when we were working with the CRM and the efficiency, the CRM data to improve efficiency, we found that there are a lot of gaps with the CRM data. There's only so much you can do with it. It can help to identify gaps, but it's not granular enough to really give really personalized recommendations. So I think if we had where we sat at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, we hadn't nailed it, and maybe I would have looked like a bit of an idiot. But I think in this case, we got lucky because then the large language models got released, and a lot of the things we couldn't do with the CRM data suddenly became possible with the large language models. And what we'd invested the last year and a half learning on the product we've been building had taught us what we needed to then sort of pivot and build this sort of third product, which then covered a lot of the gaps that we had before. So, and now since we built the coach, I think it's a significantly better product than what we had before. 10 times better than what we were doing before, and it's unlocked a lot of opportunities for us. So, coming back to the question that you had, that was a bit of a long answer.
No, it's great.
Talking about the difficulties, like that was just a difficult choice. And as I said, co-founder got burnt out along the way. By the time we wanted to pivot the second time to build the AI coach, he was out of steam because he didn't have the same vision and motivation that I had and other people in the team had. And I think that shows when these difficult times are coming. But I think the key thing is when times are tough, you're going to do you give up or do you push forward? And I think in our case, it ended up working out the right way, because even though the first pivot probably wasn't enough on its own, it unlocked the learnings that we needed to get to the next step. So I think that comes back to a lot of founders' journeys, is that it's a lot of stumbling along the way, stumbling from one step to the next. But the learnings you get along the way and what that, eventually turns into is also is part of the process.
You got to have some resilience, that's for sure. And I think it's difficult. One of the things that I've seen a lot is I've done work with startup companies in other companies in all different countries. And we're talking to you today. You're in Berlin right now, and I'm sure like a big market is North America and breaking into the North American market. We talk to a lot of founders in different countries that are trying to do the same thing, and vice versa, right? This isn't just Europe or Asia trying to get into North America. North America tries to break into Europe and other countries. for the founders out there trying to figure this out because they're going through this process, what's some advice you'd give them when you're thinking about breaking into a North American market operating out of Europe?
Honestly, I'd say that I haven't nailed it, so I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask. Uh, that
What are
being
some of the
said, I
learnings
mean,
you've had that have not been successful then?
no, if I look at our journey, I think it does make sense to stay. We've been global since the beginning, but I think where we got traction was in our home market in Germany to begin with, because I think we just benefited so much from that word of mouth, being in the
Mm,
startup, like the VC ecosystem. You get your first customers, and then they talk to each other. Founders know each other, investors know each other, and then we went very quickly, from our first 10 customers to maybe 30. And that was purely like the first 10 was such hard work, but then to get to
Yeah.
30 was a lot of word of mouth and inbound.
yeah.
So I think actually staying local, like not necessarily geographically as well. I mean, this is not my advice. This is the Crossing the Chasm, the book where they talk about creating echo chambers, right? But I think that is just so powerful, and maybe spreading yourself too thin too early is a bad thing. I would agree with that book. Now, when it comes to cracking into the US, it's such a good market compared to Europe. It's so much easier in some ways that it's a much bigger market, a lot more mature, a lot higher spend. Uh, Everyone's speaking English. So I mean, I think 50% of all SaaS spending is in the US, and then the rest of the world
Yeah.
is everything else, right? But yeah, I think getting into those communities in the US is something that I think is something that's worked well for us over the last year. It's also tied to our product. We're doing something sexy, as you said. AI is a hype, and we're doing an AI coach. So I think what's worked well for us is, rather than reaching out to companies as a tiny startup out of Germany that nobody knows about, was like getting into some of those communities, getting people like John Barrows, Kevin Gaither, Richard Harris on our board of advisors, getting on webinars and conferences and things like this to get our name out, to build a bit of a reputation before we connect with people, is something that worked well for us. So
So
I think that would be.
before Adam jumps in, what's some advice that you would give the founders to try to get people like a John Barrows or a Richard Harris? Like, these are pretty substantial people. Although you've been working at it for a little bit of time, but people try to get these names on their products all the time.
I mean, for us, it was a bit of a snowball effect. I mean, we got Richard Harris on. We were we were we started by connecting with him on doing podcasts and webinars together. So we had a relationship there, and then he was really excited about what we were doing. He tried the product out. He got really excited about it, and I think it was actually his suggestion that he wanted to come on as an advisor. So we got Richard Harris on, and he was just amazing. I mean, the guy is he's an incredibly nice guy and very generous. And he was so good at connecting us with people in the industry. And he was the one that introduced the other advisors like John and Kevin. I think he
Sure.
connected me with 20 people or something. But once you have that that warm introduction from someone they know and trust, then actually it was a lot easier. But again,
Awesome.
I think this is where, so yeah, going back, like if we had just been a tiny little startup out of Germany reaching out to people in San Francisco cold, probably wouldn't work. But when you've got these names behind you and you've got the network and you can get those first warm introductions to close the first customers, then I think it makes it a lot easier to go from there.
Yeah, those names are important, right? Like, we have people, and listen, we're not Richard Harris and John Barrows one day, but like we have people who reach out to us at the wrong time also, who are like, hey, like we're building this new product and we'd love for you to be an advisor. And to do that, you need to like post about how great we are on LinkedIn. Like, you haven't friggin' earned the right to ask me to post anything about you on LinkedIn. Like, let's build some credibility and let's learn the product and let's really see how we could work together versus you just trying to get a name. So I love the approach, like the way you talk about how, and I know Richard very well, the way that you talk about how you built that relationship and started with the podcast and then started talking and what it developed into. That's what true advisory is versus, and we don't have enough time to dive into this, what everyone has made advisory now, which is everyone's a fucking strategic advisor for everyone. And all you really are is a paid brand ambassador, and you're not a strategic advisor, and you're just trying to build up your brand. The way you're using strategic advisors as a founder is the right way to do it. You're seeking out industry experts who have deep domain expertise, who I guarantee are sitting around the table with you, giving you real advice that's not give me a script to go post about Wonderway on LinkedIn. So kudos to you for doing that the right way. Dale, take a lesson, please. Bowen, this was.
I think the other thing, maybe just for the, as you said, the founders that are reaching out, maybe demands like we didn't ask. Richard was the first one. We didn't ask him. He asked us. So I think that's also. I mean, that's kind of shit advice because you're a founder who wants to do this. Like, I don't know what you do with that, but it you know, we didn't go to Richard saying, "Hey, be an advisor," and you know, here's things you can post on LinkedIn. He came to us and we already knew him, but he was like, "Hey, I love what you're doing. I've tried it. It's great. I think it's, you know, high impact and it's very aligned with what he does." I mean, he's a sales trainer and a sales coach, and we're building an AI sales trainer and coach. So I think, you know, I think John and Richard also said, you know, they see this as a little bit of a threat to what they're doing as well. So they're like, well, we can either be scared of it or we can get on board. And, you know, if you end up, you know, taking over the world of coaching, then, you know, we'd like to participate in that rather than, I don't think that's the way it's going, by the way, for the record, but there was a little bit of that conversation as well, that, you know, if you're doing something hot and interesting, then people want to participate as well. So I think just for the founders that are listening who might be wanting to reach out to people, I think, you know, building the relationship and making sure there's good alignment between what you're doing and what they stand for is super important here.
100%. I love it. Great advice. Bowen, thank you so much for joining. Before we let you go, we're going to dive into a little bit of rapid fire. So we got a few questions for you. The rule here is your answer has to be 10 words or less. Otherwise, there's a gong that comes through the computer and bops you in your head. Actually, it's just Dale trying to get a free trip to Germany. All right, let's rock and roll. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
What's the first app you check when you wake up in the morning?
Changes. Lately, my workout app.
Cool.
Love it.
I like it. Anything's better than Slack, LinkedIn, any of those. The fact that it's not something work related, I love.
And this is Starbucks.
It's not the first app, but it is one of the first few that are opened. If Wonderway were an animal, what animal would it be and why?
A dolphin, but it's only because I've got this connection between purple and dolphins in my head from childhood, I think. I'll leave it there. It's less than 10, two more than 10 words.
Awesome. Last question. What's your dream vacation destination?
Powder skiing in Japan.
Nice. Very nice. Awesome. Bowen, we are so grateful that you joined us. There's so much knowledge, I think, specifically for founders, that were dropped here today. Where can people find you? Where can people find Wonderway?
So LinkedIn, of course, along with everybody else, and our website, Wonderway, www.wonderway.io. You can jump on there and check out both our products through our website.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for joining the show.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on.
Bowen.